So hello and welcome back to the GorillaBiker, and today I am on my friend Niall's 2014 Honda CTX1300 for a asked for quick first ride review. This is not a full first ride review where you get the the full off the bike segments or whatever else. This is just like a style I have done in the past where I just get on a bike and give you my immediate thoughts. This is the first time I have ever ridden this, which is why this review works, because I've literally never ridden this before. I've been on it, I've only been on it since my house, about 15-20 minutes, so for obvious reasons I couldn't record straight from my house, because some people are weird. But anyway, initial impressions, and bearing in mind this is a quick first ride review, so you're not going to get, I've spent several hours on a bike. These are, more in-depth kind of feelings and whatnot, but first and foremost, comfort wise, it's actually very comfortable for a taller person like myself. I'm surprised, because the predecessor of this bike, the Pan-European, or the Honda ST1300, was not very comfortable for someone my height because of where the fairings were. This bike is actually fine. The only thing that is immediately obvious is my foot. Actually, when I try to go back to the balls of my feet on the foot peg, it's hitting the ball on the kickstand. So the ball that helps you kind of push down the kickstand is actually hitting the back of my foot, which is not ideal. But I mean, it's not terrible. I'm sure it's something that I could get used to. It's just not nice. It's so easy to ride, actually, this bike. Like, again, first time I've ever been on it, and it's just an absolute breeze. Like, I'm not putting my feet down or anything at these stop signs. It's very balanced, which we'll get to in a second. I'm not sure, are these big squishy grip stock? I don't think they are. I think someone's added these kind of foam over grips, which apparently is to combat some vibrations, but it doesn't feel very vibrating to me. I know the front end on these is historically claimed to be a little bit harder. That will actually probably help me, obviously being a heavier rider, if it is sprung a little bit harder or whatever else. This is not a stock screen, just to get that out there. This is an aftermarket screen, and it's already quite nice. I would say during hotter days it would probably block a touch too much heat for me. There is a nice vent in the middle which is fully open, and that's helping slightly, but it's not actually that hot today. It's only about 24-25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees freedom, and you can definitely feel the fact that it's blocking a lot of that air that would otherwise be cooling me, which is what I'm used to. But you can change screens. That said, I'm not feeling any wind at all. There's no buffeting or whatever else, which even at lower speeds on a lot of my bikes you would tend to feel a bit more of. I think the thing that's striking me about this so far is it's so easy to ride. My arms are very comfortable, and the seat is wildly comfortable. However, from the actual very get-go, I did notice that this is quite a nice bike to ride, actually. I did notice from the get-go that V4 is just... well, we'll get to that. Stop getting ahead of yourself, Michael. The seat being as wide as it is, and my legs being as long as they are, and I have not the best hips on planet Earth. I do have to kind of splay my leg out to kind of land it down. Generally, with like my V-Strom and whatnot, I will be more predisposed to putting my leg forward when stopping, but with this bike I do need to put it to the side, which with my hips is not the most ideal position that it could be. Now, it is actually quite blustery today, and that screen is doing a great job now, so that is nice. But yeah, from a comfort perspective, so far genuinely very comfortable. We haven't hit any rough patches yet. Obviously I will update you throughout the review, but I won't stick on comfort. It's a comfortable bike. The foot pegs, both for the rider and the passenger, nice and wide, plenty of rubber on them, so this is a cruiser. This is designed for kind of comfort and touring, and I think it does that very well on first impressions, and I think it will continue to do that very well after my first impressions, to be honest, just because of how it's set up. My knees, and again, I should have said that at the start, I am 6'7" or 200 centimeters tall, and I'm around about 126 kg or 277 pounds at the moment, I think it is, something like that. I haven't actually weighed myself in pounds, so I'm guessing I more go off kg. But so for a tall and heavier person, I'm actually not too crunched up. I don't think my legs are hitting kind of where they are supposed to probably hit here. I'm just kind of touching the top end of that, but still where they're landing and for where my hips are, it's actually quite comfortable. You know, it's in no way putting me out. All the switch gear is easy to use. I already kind of tested all that. There is this kind of aftermarket, I think it's aftermarket, cruise control fitted on here that does block you from the hazards. I don't like that. I would probably take it off if this was my bike, just because I like to be able to use all of the controls. But again, this is a more simple bike, so it's, you know, there's nothing crazy on here like electronically or whatever else. Another nice thing that this does do, back in the day, and you know, obviously Harley have been doing it for a long time, as well as I think Triumph, but it has auto cancelling indicators, which I've already tested, just taking a couple of turns, and they do work, which is nice. That's a rarity on bikes. I don't know, like, it's not something that's wildly needed or necessary, but it does do a good job of it, which is nice. Let's just do a little. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, very comfortable. Seats very comfortable. Riding position, especially with this screen, very comfortable. I can see over the screen, so it's not too tall or whatever else. So yeah, all in all, I think comfort-wise, it is very good. Now, the only couple of things that I need to mention as slight detractors from a how would you put it, ergonomic sense, is definitely the position of the wing mirrors. It's not great. It's not great. Now, I know that's a gripe. If you were reading literally any other review about this bike, it's a gripe that has long been talked about. So I won't hang on it too much, because I don't think it's going to add anything. Ooh, a little kick there from the shaft drive. Just remember this for when we get onto the power and torque, which will be momentarily. Oh, she moves. Well, yeah, I think that's the only real thing ergonomically I have felt so far, is the mirrors. Now, obviously, reading other reviews, like I said, some people have complained about the front end being harsh. I haven't personally felt that yet, but if I do, I'll let you know. I know when Niall first picked this bike up, he did find it a little bit harsher, and then we discovered that he had actually, the previous owner had too much air in the front tire. He fixed that and has said it has been a lot better over a couple of spins we've done. So, you know, I think maybe that was part of the issue. So overall, I think so far, very comfortable bike, no real complaints. Power and torque. Let's see, can I remember much of the notes? So I did look up actual dyno tested numbers on this as well, which we'll get to in a second, and I'll share them on screen if I can find them again. But the Honda numbers for this are about 83 brake horsepower at 6,000 RPM, and this only revs to 7. Redline is at 7, and 106 Newton meters at 4.5. So, you know, not little kitty cat. Well, we just tested the brakes and they were pretty good. We'll get to do that again later. A little kitty cat. But anyway. Yeah, so I mean, it's the brake horsepower number isn't anything to set your world alight. It's nothing to write home about, especially as this is a shaft drive motorcycle, right? Shaft drives are great for touring and maintenance, but they do rob you of power. Actually, this is a good place to do a brake test. We'll do that now, just to get it over with. So we're going fast. Big brake. Those brakes are very good. Very good. And you can see the kind of acceleration that you have. I'm not giving it like absolutely every bean that it has out of the tin, but I'm giving it plenty there. So I mean, the bike moves, but again, I don't think this is made to be, and I think that's what hurt these actually back in the day, is everyone was comparing them to the ST1300, but it's not an ST1300. It's the same engine. It's a V4. It's a 1260 something cc V4, but it is very much more tuned for touring and whatnot. We'll do another brake test here just so we have it on the list. So we're doing big brakes. And now we're down to 30. Those brakes are phenomenal. Those brakes are really, really good. That bike brakes really well. Now, I am giving this plenty of rear brake bias, doing that just because, you know, it's a big, heavier cruiser, so you are supposed to brake more with your rear than you would on a traditional, you know, sportier bike or whatever else, because you don't pitch forward as much. There's a lot more weight still on the back. But yeah, brakes on this bike, really, really good. Really good. And the power and torque for what it is, yeah, okay, it could, like, if this was more kind of aimed at being some form of kind of muscle cruiser, I would understand someone being a little bit more upset. But it's not a muscle cruiser. It was, you know, marketed as a tour. It has a radio, for God's sake. So it was never intended to be something that was... Oh, good job indicating early, anyway. It was never intended to be something, you know, to rival, say, the old Honda Valkyrie. It's not like a stripped down version of the Goldwing. It was very much more intended to be like a pure out and out tourer, which I think it is. I think it is. So for me, I mean, okay, yeah, are the, you know, torque and brake horsepower figures going to set your world alight? No. Is this going to win any drag races? No. You know, just as a comparison for that, my V-Strom weighs like over 100 kg less than this, makes more peak brake horsepower and makes almost the same peak torque at around about the same place. So, you know, yeah, it's not a muscle bike. It was never intended to be a muscle bike, and that's okay. You know what I mean? It is a tour. It has a radio. It has suitcases on the back. I think the power and the torque, when you think about what this bike was designed for and who it's for, and we'll get to all that in a second, I think it's very nice, actually. It's very easy to ride at low speeds, which was a surprise. It becomes weightless very quickly, and if you've ridden a heavier bike, you know what I mean about that. And actually, to get that out there, this bike weighs like 334, 364 kg. I'll put that on the screen, but it's like over 700 pounds, 730 something pounds. So it is a heavy bike, but you know, in comparison to like some of the Harleys and stuff that are out there, it's not as heavy as those, but it is still a heavy bike. For sure. And the other thing, like I said, it is a 1260 something cc V4 engine. It is a 5-speed, which we'll cover that in a sec. 5-speed shaft final drive bike. Okay, now I see. This is a bumpier road. I can definitely see what people mean about the front end. I don't know, can you see that? But watch my 360 camera is probably unwatchable right now because of the vibrations. But that's actually kind of, that's a lot. It's not bad though, like through my hands I'm not feeling it, and it's not like putting me off into the corner or whatever else. So I mean, yeah, but we'll talk about that in a second in suspension and handling. Like I said, just remember everything that we're kind of going through, but that is kind of bumpy, yeah, for sure. There is a lot of vibration up through the bars now, especially as I like to balance a finger on the front brake, and I can feel it more through the front brake, which is obviously less damped than my hands are with this foam. So yeah, okay, I see what people mean. But anyway, yeah, so it's a heavy bike, but it doesn't feel like it. So, you know, the power and torque, I think, for the bike and what it was intended for, which is long distance, comfortable, reliable touring, I think it's very good. Would I like some more power if this was my bike? Sure, because I've always been a fan of like the muscle bikes and whatnot. If you've been watching the channel a long time, you know that. But I think also, like, we'll just kick it down 2 gears and do a little pull here. And then we'll do a brake test from fast. Like, the balance of the brakes with the power, really good, really good. This thing, and I think the funny thing is, it's so smooth, you know, revving up through those speeds, and then it's so smooth on the brakes. I think it's just an easy bike to ride. You know, power and torque, we'll put it in, like, if there was a list, it'd be like easy, good, comfortable, which again is kind of what this bike is for. And so suspension and handling, I mean, you've already seen the brake tests. We've already talked about this vibration, which certainly 100% exists. I think people who called that out were correct. On rougher roads, it is definitely, more vibratory than I would expect from a bike. So definitely Honda probably could have refined that a little bit more. But at the same time, it's not terrible. It's not like jarring per se. But definitely it is the worst I think I have ever ridden from a vibrating perspective. If that makes any sense at all. I've never been very good at English. It's not my first language. Irish is. But yeah, suspension and handling. So obviously, the front end, if you were to Google the CTX1300, the front end has long been a pain point. It has long been something that people have talked about. Even if you go back, and actually no, I'll talk about that at the end, but if you go back and look at lots of early reviews and stuff, a lot of them did mention that front end as well. Now, for me, I think it's a non-issue. I think it's something that has been fixed by people over the years, whether it's just a better fork, I should say, fork internals, or just revalving, respringing, changing the weight of the oil. I think the nice thing about this is it's a problem that has been solved. Like slow speed turning and everything is just so good on this. It really, really is. So acknowledging that there is an issue, but that it's 100% fixed, basically, or fixable, it wouldn't stop me buying one, I'll be honest. Definitely wouldn't stop me buying one. Oh, look! That's a mule! So cute. And I think other than that, everything else, like the seat, really good. It handles great into faster corners or slower corners. Slow speed, it's excellent. It's just a very manageable bike. Like I genuinely don't have anything that jumps out at me from a suspension handling perspective. The brakes work really, really well. Very impressed with the brakes. They're very linear, so there's no big horrible lump of brakes that I'm trying to contend with. My rear brake, that's just rear brake. Rear brake is really good, very controllable. Front brake is very good, very progressive. Kind of what you would expect from a well-built bike from Honda, and in my opinion, that's what it is. Is it odd? Sure. Does it have some foibles that probably would have been worked out if they'd done a couple of generations of this bike? Absolutely, but they didn't. This is what we got, and I think for what we got, like I said, everything that's there is very fixable. So, we've done the brake test. You've already seen that in the video. Obviously, you're watching me ride it. It is so easy to ride at any kind of cruising speed. Slow speed, it's really easy to ride. The first time I actually rode this was literally for 20 seconds around a car park with a toaster on the back. Niall wanted her to get a shot of it as well. She was sitting on the back, and I was just doing U-turns with her on there, and it's so surprising at how easy this is to ride at those speeds. What contributes to that is how smooth that engine is. There's no surprises with the engine. It's very smooth, very progressive, which lends to that, smoothness into corners and whatnot. This bike isn't a bike that makes you want to, really drive it into a corner, brake, and then come out at like a 90-degree V. You know what I mean? This is something that you want to just kind of roll through the corners, get all your braking done first, and just be smooth, which, I mean, it's what it's for. You know what I mean? This is something designed for having someone on the back and, doing 200, 300, 400 miles, 500-600 kilometers in a day, just cruising through Europe, or, maybe the Blue Ridge Parkway or something. That's what this is for. Ground clearance wise, I haven't been disappointed going through corners yet. It doesn't have the most ground clearance in the world, especially as a lot of the deluxe ones, these ones are fitted with center stands and whatnot. This one has one. So your ground clearance is, it's not amazing. At some point, if you were trying to push one of these, I feel you would probably ground it out. Again, that's just something that you have to be cognizant of as a rider. You have to be aware of the failings of whatever bike you have, because every bike has failings. But yeah, for me, I think, ooh, that looks interesting that way. Might have to come back there. But just even there, coming into stops, I'm not even tempted to put my feet down because it's so well balanced. which for a bike that is as heavy as it is a really good thing, you know. So suspension handling, yeah, okay, definitely that front end, I can feel what people talk about. It feels kind of harsh, or that it could be harsh on the wrong roads. Like now it's fine, but earlier on that rougher road, it was definitely a little bit harsher. But in here, like, you know, rolling off the power, rolling back on the power past the apex, it's just lovely. It's just lovely. Very, very smooth, very easy to ride. I really have no other comments on the suspension or the handling, other than, yes, the front end probably does need a little bit of work at some point. Known issue. It's a fork rebuild, not a big deal. Whether you're doing it yourself or someone else is doing it for you, fork rebuilds are not a big deal, you know what I mean? I've done many a fork rebuild on this channel. If that's something you want to look at, I can drop a link in the description, or if you ask about it, I can send you a link or whatever else, or reply to your comment with a link. Either way, definitely not something that I would be not buying one of these bikes for, if that's the only foible. So kind of other added bits we'll talk about are the extras on this bike, and also, you know, just general reliability, fuel economy, and that's what I want to talk about. Motorcycle News did a review on this bike years ago, and they savaged it. I mean, it was like, it was not a good score. And I actually remember reading that a long time ago. I didn't remember that I read it until I actually went preparing for this video to just, you know, freshen up on some, you know, complaints that other people have had and stuff. And actually, funnily enough, I think I'd read it like 8 years ago, something like that. It was on my history. And what was very interesting to me is the owner reviews, because, you know, Motorcycle News had given like 2.5, 3 stars, 3.5 stars across the board. The owners, everything is up near 5. It's like, I think the lowest average score is 4.4. So, and I mean, a lot of that is how reliable these are. You know, people buy these for touring, and if you can comfortably tour, you know, with enough comfort and power, basically, for what you're aiming for, you're gonna love it, because it doesn't break down. The ST1300 was a very, 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 very well regarded and proven motorcycle. This has the same engine that's detuned and reworked slightly for, you know, less power. But if you have an engine that's capable of a lot more power and you detune it, generally what that means is you've actually made it more reliable. And that's, by the looks of it, what Honda did. You know, other nice things about this, I think, is obviously this did come back in the day with ABS and traction control all around. The deluxe model anyway. I don't know that the non-deluxe have... What is this person doing? This person can't drive. We're in a 45 zone, they're doing 35 and braking when they see people on the far side of the road. Anywho, the deluxe models definitely had front and rear ABS, which this one is, and also traction control. So I mean, it's a very safe bike as well. It's very easy to ride, which already makes it safe, and then it has all those little nice extra bits that make it even safer. And actually, what's interesting, it does sound lovely off throttle, just blubbling down. What was interesting is when we were looking at bikes for Niall, we stopped at one guy who had an ST1300, and he also had a CTX1300. And what was very interesting was he was keeping the CTX1300 instead of the ST. And his reasoning was he was older, which is why he was... Oh, and that was a pretty actually harsh bump there, and I felt fine over it. Both my back and the front end, so that's good. But yeah, he was keeping the CTX, and the reason he was keeping the CTX, or his rationale behind it, was he was getting older, and this was easier to ride. So, you know, I think all of the traction control, ABS, handling, suspension, all that play into that one. But it was an interesting observation for me. Just even there, like the ease of turning is lovely. Now, one extra that personally, I think it actually detracts from a bike, but I'm sure someone somewhere will care about this. It does have radio, but it's Bluetooth radio only. There's no actual radio on the bike, it's just the speakers. So you do have to connect your phone or whatever else to play music. Personally, I'm not a big fan of, you know, out loud speakers when riding a bike. But they're there, so I'll tell you that is an extra. Other extras is you do have kind of upfront storage here. You can see your track volume, all those buttons that are for use with the Bluetooth radio. And then other items are obviously you have some tracking pieces here. You can go through your lower screen, which you've trip A, trip B, air temperature and total mileage, of which is actually really low. And then you also have your upper one, which is average speed, trip time, instant fuel economy and average fuel economy. And this bike, since whenever it was last reset, its average is 43. That's so easy to take off on. Such an easy bike to ride. The average is 43.5 US miles per gallon, which is really good. I'll put the conversions on screen now. I can't do that in my head, but it's really, really good. I mean, it's for a big, heavy bike. It is exceptionally good. And I don't know. I've never obviously gotten a chance to test it, but I don't know, is the ST1300 better or worse than that? It would be interesting though to see, is that, you know, another part of why they detuned it was to just try make it better on fuel and more appealing as a tour, because this does have a 19 point something litre tank or 5.1 US gallons. I've seen people who have said they get between 160 miles and some people get over 200 miles out of a tank. That's going to depend on how you ride, obviously, and how much weight you have on the bike. But worth noting, you know, it's a pretty decent sized tank, and it's a pretty decent range out of a bike. One thing to note is that the center of gravity on this bike is also slightly better, because they actually put the fuel tank kind of partially under the seat. I don't know, is it all the way, or is it only under the seat? That does bring us on to talk about, though, the actual, you know, reliability and maintenance of these. Reliability, obviously, I haven't owned one. Niall hasn't owned one for very long. However, if you look it up online, reliability is really, really rated really high from owners. So that's what I'm going to base this off and say that it's probably really, really reliable. Because I've never seen any kind of major complaint about the engine or really any component failing on their own. Now, the only thing I have seen is just making sure Niall got with me there. The only thing I have seen is that the changing like the air filter and stuff is apparently a nightmare. Apparently, it's a pretty big job. And also another complaint that has been noted by many an owner is the reliability of the plastics. Now, I don't know, can you see right there, but that plastic is opened up as we've been riding, which is apparently a common problem, and you can see the battery and stuff. And that's something that I read on a couple of owners' reviews, is that it's in your eye line and it's, you know, it can be distracting. So that's definitely worth mentioning. We're nearly where we're going, so we'll talk about the aesthetics, because I know that's a contentious subject for this one. Are we good? Oh, look, we're doing a kind of a foldy backy, so we get to really test. Oh yeah, this thing is so easy to ride. Just balancing it on, you know, on the clutch. Very easy to ride, very smooth. It's a really easy bike. Oh, horses. Or horse. A single horse. The aesthetics. Obviously, when we get off the bike, we'll talk about some of the more contentious parts of the aesthetics. But from here, it's actually, I think it's a nice bike. I think it looks good from when you're riding it. Now, one thing I'm not a big fan of aesthetically from here is the mirrors. I think they could probably be... I don't know how you'd make them better. I'm not a designer of aesthetic things, but yeah, I think that could probably be somewhat improved. Also, actually quite easy to maneuver around on my legs. That kickstand, even its position right now. Anyway, so like I was saying, aesthetically, sitting on the bike, it's not something that I find not, you know, unpleasant. I think it's actually quite a nice cockpit. Very reminiscent of actually kind of the Gold Wings as well, with the kind of nearly the car dashboard. I don't like these, and I'm not a big fan of these, but, you know, not a major deal. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where people have a lot of issues. When I saw this in photos, you know, before we went and actually looked at it in person for Niall, I was like, I don't know. I've always found them a more interesting shape and style, like CTX, 700. I've always found that a very interesting bike. but this one I was more unsure of till I saw it in person. All of this actually kind of makes sense in person. I think it looks better. I think a big thing is this screen. I think the stock short screen, I don't like that. And I think that taller screen just makes it all make a little bit more sense. This piece, me and Niall both agree, is the piece that we don't really get. It kind of looks out of place with the bike. Engine looks great. It's actually a longitudinally mounted V4, which in a car is perfect because all engines should be longitudinally mounted for rear-wheel drive. It does make things slightly more difficult for service and maintenance, but it does look great. I love those heads just poking out there. And I think the rest of the bike looks really nice. Riding behind it, the rear light looks really cool. It's like a kind of a gull wing shape. And then from directly in front, also a pretty bike. I actually kind of like the front end. It's just that bit. And I will say, though, until I met it in person and we shook hands, had a little chat, I wasn't a huge fan. But now, after meeting it in person and, obviously riding it, I don't mind the looks. They're still definitely different, but that's not particularly a bad thing. What do you think? Do you like the looks of this bike? Let me know. And then, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I think we've covered everything. Oh, the cost. So Niall paid $5,800 for this bike, private sale. And these can be had, depending on the mileage. He got a low mileage model, and it's a deluxe. They can be had from anywhere from 4.5. I've seen them listed as much as 7.5, 8. And I think it really depends on, number one, the seller, the location, and the mileage, and the condition. All of them, I think, without fail, will probably have issues with these plastics here by the looks of it, because that's been talked about since they were brand new, so be aware of that. And then one of the last things we have to test, I have never opened these boxes myself. We talked about this earlier, but this is a big thing people have issues with. They apparently say these are awkward to open, so I'm going to just try people are liars. That's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's that test. Now I do know people don't like the side opening clamshell case. They prefer top loading. You can obviously change these to different boxes if you want to. There's lots of stuff available out there. And then this is a Jivy box that is not standard. But Jivy is great quality. Everyone knows that, and I quite like that. Lots of storage space in there. You can fit your helmet in there, can't you? So, that's a big thing. He can fit his helmet in there. Other things, turn it left. Other things, that's the fuel. So it is a covered little thing. So, you have to take your key out for any bike, but just here you have to put it in there. On most bikes, you have to put it into the cap. So just something to note there. Other than that, I think that's everything. The shaft drive is claimed as maintenance free, and they say you can run oil long, and I don't ever recommend long oil change intervals. Any engine I've ever seen that does it ends up not looking as purty as it should. But that's it. So to summarize, I think this is a very comfortable bike, very easy to ride. The power and the torque that it has are good for what it is. It could probably use a little bit more poke, to excite people a little bit more. But honestly, I don't think people that ever use it, I think you would end up not revving it up that high anyway. You just use the torque that's there, and that torque is there all the time anyway. I think it's a pretty good looking bike. Definitely a different looking bike, but that's not particularly a bad thing. Actually, in a lot of ways, it's a good thing. So yeah, overall, I think it's a really nice bike. Would I buy one? Yeah, probably, if I was in the market for a cruiser and they cost, around about that price for something with this much mileage. It's only like 7,800 miles on his one. I would, yeah. I think it's a cool bike. Other things to note is the rear tire is a strange size. It's a 200 profile R17, which I have read there's not many options for. So that you might have to order your tires in advance, basically. So just be aware of that. But yeah, that's it. If you've watched, thank you very much for watching. Prepare for an outro crew question. Let me know what you think of this bike. For me, I think everything we've talked about, I really actually do like it. And that surprises me, because I remember when we were originally looking at it, I was very much on the side of the ST1300. That was what I was personally recommending, was, just get the ST1300, it's a great bike. But then the more we talked about it, the more I was like, well, this is a different experience, and I'm actually really glad he bought this. I'm really glad I got to ride it, so thanks, Niall. And yeah, As always, a very special thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you very much for supporting the channel and continuing to support the channel. And yeah, if you have any questions at all on this bike, leave them down in the comments. Either I will read it and answer it, or Niall will read them and answer it, and he actually owns the bike. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and shoot Niall a thank you message for letting me use his motorcycle. And that's it. Thanks again for watching. Adios. Niall. Yeah? It's time. Outro crew. Niall's going to ask you a question.
We're watching Long Way Home at the moment. So what's your dream road trip?
Ooh. That's a good question. Yeah, we are watching Long Way Home at the moment. Good old Ewan and Charlie. Also, if you're watching Long Way Home, what do you think of Long Way Home? That's it. That's all the questions that we have. Goodbye. Thanks, Outro crew.